So I came across the story, and this story happens to be a very popular story, and I'm very sure that we are even very familiar with the story. Sorry. So we are even very familiar with the story. So this story is about Simon Peter and Jesus, and most of us even know it as the miracle of the fish miracle, the miracle of the fish. So we are made to understand that Simon Peter and his colleague, that's John, Simon Peter, they toiled all night. The scripture says they worked hard all night and they caught nothing. And I was trying to put myself in their shoes, and I'm like, to fish on the sea, the cold that they encountered and everything, but yet they still worked hard throughout the night trying to fish. So these were men and they caught nothing. So these were men that probably must have been disappointed. Probably they must have felt discouraged, just trying to think, oh, how do I go about to fend for myself when I fish throughout the night and get nothing? And then there's Jesus. Jesus was trying to teach the gospel, and then the crowd was too much, and he cited Simon Peter and his colleagues' boats, and these people were washing their nets to probably go home in disappointment and in the pain that they were feeling. And Jesus came and asked them to lend him his boat. And I'm like, Jesus, this question just came up, and it just came up in my head. I'm like, Jesus, were you not aware that these people literally worked hard the one night? Well, and what did you do about it? And then you come to ask them to lend you their boat. Why should they even lend you their boat? And mind you, this is someone that they really did not even know at the time. But we see that despite what these people had been through, they refused to dwell on their past. Simon Peter refused to dwell on his past, despite what he had been through, and he chose to lend Jesus his boat. And so at that moment, when I asked that question, Jesus says, and the answer I get is, I was aware that they toiled throughout the night. I knew that they toiled throughout the night. But my will for them at that time was a greater one. Not my will for them at that time was not that they catch fish. Was it a part of my plan? Yes, it was a part of my plan. But my will for them at that time was that they listened to the gospel that I was about to preach. They listened to the teaching that I was about to preach, and that the seed of the gospel was sown in their heart. And we see that these men actually did lend Jesus their boat despite how they felt. They actually did lend Jesus their boat, and we see how Jesus was able to teach, and the gospel was fulfilled. But then, immediately after Jesus was done with his teaching, these people did not have to ask. This is where we realize that Jesus is aware. So they did not have to ask that, Master, we toiled all night, but we got nothing. But in fact, it was Jesus that told them. He said, spread out your net, and you will catch fish. But now the amazing part of it is the fact that is the response that Simon Peter told Jesus. He was about to complain. Yes, he even did. It was like, we worked hard already throughout the night, but we got nothing. But then he said, I will hold you accountable for your word. I will go again because of your word. That was what Simon Peter said. He said, I will go again because of your word. And the scripture says that they did go again, and that was when the miracle of the fish happened. So it made me think and realize that there's so many of us right now. You've been through so much. In fact, you're going through so much. That heartbreak you're going through, that pain you're going through, the disappointment that you think that you're facing right now, the failures that you've been encountering. In fact, you've worked so hard, you've put in so much energy, and the results that you're getting, you do not even understand it. I want you to know that Jesus is more than aware. But at the same time, are you in alignment to his will and his purpose for you at that time? But if the answer is truly yes, just like the story that I really just told you about, there was a greater will. There was a greater will. And okay, let me complete the story. After the miracle of the fish happened, we see how Simon Peter knelt down and said, who are you, Lord? I am a sinner. So that is the moment when the seed of the gospel that was sown in the heart of Simon Peter actually germinated and led Simon Peter to actually follow Jesus. So we are just familiar about the miracle that happened, the fish, but the greatest miracle happened, which was the salvation of the soul of Simon Peter after the fish. So God is more than aware of the situation that you're going through right now. And he has a greater plan. He has a greater will for you at this time and at this moment. But the question is, what's the word? What is he saying concerning what you're going through right now? Just like Simon Peter, would you choose to wallow in your pain? Would you choose to wallow in the disappointment that you're going through? Will you choose to wallow in the failures? Will you choose to wallow in that heartbreak? I know that your body is giving you signs and symptoms, or that you just collected this doctor's report that is not in alignment to the will of the Lord. But will you choose to wallow in that feeling? Or will you choose to actually be like Simon Peter and say, God, this is your word concerning this time and this season, so I will choose to hold on to your word. In fact, do you even know the word that God is talking to you about in this season? Ask him. He's more than willing to tell you. But even when he does tell you, pick up yourself. Make up your mind that you would go again, but this time you're going holding on to his word. Make up your mind that you would go again, and you would see how God's will for you, his plan and his purpose for you would come to pass. One thing I want you to remember is that everything that you're going through, just like the story of Simon Peter, everything they went through was in accordance to God's will and purpose, and it worked together for their own good. So whatever that you're passing through right now, whatever that you're passing through in this season, everything is going to work together for your good. So I want you to hold on to that word. Remind yourself of that word. David will say, I encourage myself in the Lord. Remind yourself of the word that God has said concerning you and hold on to it. Do not listen to your five senses, but instead make faith your first sense. Make faith the major senses. Walk in faith. Refuse the feeling that you are feeling right now. Refuse what you've heard. Refuse to believe what you're seeing, and choose to hold on to God's promises. And you'll see how everything would work together for the fulfillment of your own good and according to God's will and purpose.